Hey people, it's Kieran from the Run Testers here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about this. This is a budget running watch with GPS and heart rate on board. It's called the Runtopia S1, and it's from the people who make a basic run tracking app, the Runtopia app, which not only tracks your runs, but it also converts that activity into virtual currency that you can cash in for rewards. Now, about a year ago, these guys moved into making some hardware in the form of this, the S1. It is $100 or £69, so that is a super cheap price point for a running watch that packs GPS and heart rate. But although that's an attractive proposition, that is still money wasted if this doesn't do the basics with accuracy and competency. So we have put it through a lot of testing, the same kind of testing we would judge a more expensive watch by, to see if this is your ideal entry-level running watch option, or you should run a mile from it. Let's find out. So let's talk about design. For the money that you're spending, you're getting a surprisingly attractive watch, and looks-wise, it actually has some of the detail, I think, of a much pricier watch than you'd expect. You've got a zinc alloy kind of frame here. It does have quite a big bezel, and inside of that big bezel, you've got what is a fairly simplistic 128 by 128 resolution monochrome digital display. That screen is touchscreen though. We'll come on to that a little bit later. But overall, what you've got here, yes, it's kind of as chunky as a Phoenix 6, which is an interesting choice. Really, when we're used to seeing kind of budget running watches, they tend to go for a kind of a lighter, smaller, pared back look. And if you look, this one, it's kind of up there with the Phoenix 6 in terms of its size. So that's an interesting choice, really. You've also got a decent rubber strap here. It's comfortable. There's a really, actually quite a nice clasp. I think that clasp is up there with other more expensive watches, and often these are things that on a budget watch, again, you find that they scrimp on, and these can feel quite cheap and a little bit nasty. But actually here, that whole bit, the strap and the clasp, comfortable and easy to use, good solid work there. On the side, you've got two control buttons that work alongside that touchscreen. You've also got replaceable straps, so you can take those out, although you don't get any extra spare straps in the box. That's pretty standard, but you could buy a standard watch strap and swap it if you so desired. It's waterproof to 30 meters. Good, solid, robust. That means it's going to last in the rain and the sweat. That's no problem. It's also light and comfy on the wrist. The official stats say it's 55 grams. We found it closer on the scales to 64 grams. But still, that is, for its size actually, for the size of the screen and the size of the watch itself, that's remarkably light. There's a question here I have in my head, which is whether or not they should have just gone for a smaller build, made it even lighter, because that would have been a real sort of sales point. But maybe they've tried to make it feel a little bit more robust, so you've got something substantial on your wrist, and it kind of does that without feeling heavy and annoying. Let's talk a little bit more about that screen. It's kind of adequate, right? You can see the visibility is pretty good in most lights, in daylight anyway. I went out and did some runs on this when it was really sort of sunny. There was quite a lot of glare, and I had no problems with seeing what was going on the screen. So as we mentioned, this is a touchscreen. It doesn't look much like it, and it's not kind of the touchscreen that we're used to from other running watches where there's colour and it feels like a lot more has been made of that. But it is touchscreen nevertheless, and there's some simple swipes and swipes up and down, side to side, that are some of the main controls. Now the touchscreen is laggy. It does take a little bit of time to respond. You will find yourself swiping a couple of times, and that can be a bit annoying. The same actually has to be said for the buttons. They require quite a firm press, and they can have a little bit of lag between the press and the action. So that's something that is a little bit of a frustration. It happens with cheaper watches. So what does it track? Unlike some of the other budget running watches you might get that sort of veer into multi-sport, so they might track cycling, they might track other activities, this focuses solely on running. Now you can do indoor and outdoor run tracking. There is an accelerometer in there for tracking your indoor runs. And the stats that you get from your runs on the watch, you get average pace, distance, heart rate, stride length, cadence and calories. It also does step counting and sedentary reminders, so if you've been inactive, it will remind you to move outside of your runs. There's a rudimentary map on the watch, but it's almost impossible to make any sense of that. It's really too kind of pared back. It's like a little grey line on a grey background. It doesn't really mean too much actually when you use it. Post run, you get all of those stats, or most of those stats as well. You get distance, average pace, average speed, max speed, calories. You also get cadence and elevation, and heart rate zones. So all in all, that is a decent breadth of stats tracked. There's good coverage there across some of the main metrics that you'd want from a budget running watch. It's important to say though that many of those stats are actually available if you just use the free app or another free app, and you can get that access without necessarily using a watch. What it does though with the watch is put it where you need it on the wrist. But in terms of the breadth, it's pretty solid. So a decent range of tracking is all good, but how accurate is this? And the answer, unfortunately, is not really. The GPS distance, total distance during a run came up pretty well over several runs against the Garmin Fenix 6, which is a good thing. So your total distance covered, fairly accurate. Real-time pace, squiffy, seemed all over the place. It was reading much faster than we were running, which is interesting compared to the Fenix 6. Heart rate, dreadful, unusable basically. On our runs, every single run we did, it went in the first 30 seconds, it bounced us up to a 170 plus BPM from the get-go. Even on a very, very slow run for me, which is like a 9.5 minute mile, very, very slow and steady run in the sun, it was saying that I did 70 minutes of that at like a 170 to 175. I can tell you I did not, because I'm not that tough enough. So the heart rate all over the shop on this, and basically makes it unusable. So you can almost completely disregard the heart rate data according to our tests. And that's one of the big features that it's selling you here for the price. Now, if you like to use heart rate data, that's going to be a problem, and you are almost certainly going to want to trade up and look for something that does the job better. So when it came to elevation and cadence, that seemed to be more reliable. It matched almost blow by blow my Garmin for the total elevation stats and the charts. And also for my cadence, it was pretty much spot on, hitting me within range of the Garmin too. So that's pretty strong. A good point for the Runtopia S1. A bad point, however, for this watch was that the syncing with the app was glitchy and buggy, to say the least. Getting it out of the box and pairing it initially took me about 5 or 6 attempts, where I had to delete the app, reinstall it, force Bluetooth to forget the watch, try and repair it. Eventually I managed to get the watch to pair the data with the app, but it does that intermittently. It's really, really buggy and unreliable. It's a super frustration. You know, when you get back from a run, you don't really want to be faffing around. You want to be able to get into the app and see data, because frankly there is some data on here, but you want to see more data in the charts and the graphs, and that's where you really, I think a lot of people, at least I do, I personally review my data a lot in the app. So not being able to do that instantly is a little bit annoying. So when it comes to the app and the data that you get post-run, the presentation's fairly clean, it's fairly basic. You can see your total distance for the ever since you've been using it, or you can split it down by days, weeks, months and years. You can see some records for different distances over time, which is a nice feature. So you can see there's medals and badges in there, which obviously, you know, if you're a beginner runner, that's actually quite a good motivational tool. And there are things like, you know, completing 5K, doing 10K, half marathon, doing 20 days run streak on the bounce, those kind of things. The app though, overall, there are little bugs, like the maps don't quite load in properly. We found something where if you switch between miles and metric kilometers in the app, it doesn't then rejig your splits. I switched to miles and it came up in kilometers still in the app. Little things like that are a little bit annoying. Also, there's quite a lot of functions that are tucked away behind a premium subscription. There's $3.99 per month to do that, or $24.99 for a year. It's not a huge expense, but some of the smarter intelligence about kind of pace analyzing and cadence analyzing, the metronome function that this watch has that can help you improve your cadence, is all tucked away behind premium features. Now, you haven't paid a lot for the watch in the first place, but actually looking at the broad feature set up against other reasonably priced watches, it just feels like they should have chucked those in as well. I don't think there's enough behind the paywall also that you're really just going to want to shell out for that. And the reliability of the watch overall just makes me question whether or not people should or would kind of part with the extra money. Sticking it in here might have made this a more useful all-round tool, even though it's a very, very cheap one. I guess another big point here is that it doesn't sync to Strava, so you can't fire your stats automatically via the app or the watch into Strava. It's a bit annoying. Strava's basically now the aggregator, and that's almost like a hygiene factor with most watches. And again, I think there are things that you'd rather sort of sacrifice here from some of the features that you'd prefer to have the ability to get that data into Strava. It seems some of the choice about what's included and what's not seem to be a little bit odd in terms of just being basic level useful. And Strava was one of them that I would question that it would be good to have this. Obviously, that can be dictated by Strava themselves. So Runtopia, a potentially competitive app. So maybe that's one of the reasons that it's not there. When it comes to battery life, the official claims for the Runtopia S1 are 8 hours. We found it to be pretty solid actually. It's lived up to that, and didn't need to charge it for a week of runs, so we were pretty happy with that. Again, on a budget, that's pretty competitive, really. You're not talking about the 24 hours that you'll get from a top range Garmin, but hey ho, you've paid $100 for it. So battery life, solid for the price. So that all important bit, should you buy the Runtopia S1? Well, in short, the answer is probably not. Even if you're looking for a budget watch, there's probably too much wrong with this. I think it's too buggy. It doesn't sync well. The heart rate isn't accurate. The GPS real-time pace isn't really particularly accurate. There's not really that many features to it. And I think even if you're looking for something on a really tight budget, this would be a little bit of a false economy. If you're going to want to track your runs, there's a really solid argument for sticking to one of the free smartphone apps that you can get. They will give you a lot more stats. You could even invest in a chest strap. If you want to get heart rate, invest in a chest strap, pair it with one of the free apps, and you'll get far more accurate data, and you'll get zone training over your earphones if you connect your Bluetooth phone, if you run with your phone. I understand that not everybody runs with their phone, and a phone won't put the stats where you might want to see them on your wrist. That is a downside. It also won't do indoor tracking like this one will do with an accelerometer as well. But I think on the basis of what you're paying for this, I think it's actually, I think you're going to get it and you're going to be disappointed and you're going to wish you had gone for something different. The other options out there actually, if you go for a low-end Garmin or a Polar, you could go for the Garmin Forerunner 45. It is more expensive. It's £169, so it's a lot more expensive. But the Polar M200 is £129, and actually, if you look carefully, you can find that for £99. So for an extra £30, you get a tool that's far more reliable and actually plugs you into the universe of Polar Flow, which is far, far more capable than the app that you get to partner Runtopia. So always up. I really wanted this to be an absolute bargain and say, guys, we found the best bargain watch out there right now, but I think it's a money trap. I wouldn't personally pay the £70 for it. I've seen some good reviews around the internet. Those guys, if you read them in detail, they haven't really tested this watch very well, and I can tell you that it doesn't really stand up to much scrutiny. So don't buy it.